You can tell a lot about a man by the way he borrows your car. Mike always returned mine with the seat adjusted just slightly too far back, the kind of small detail that says, I was comfortable, but not in a way that considers you. He also left crumbs in the cup holder, not a metaphor, literal crumbs. Flaky pastry, usually. Croissant man. Of course he was. The third weekend in a row he asked to use it. I didn't argue. He said he had a shoot in Shoreditch and his motorbike was still at the garage. Again, I said, no problem, kissed his cheek, and handed over the keys with a smile. I'm very good at smiles. He left at 10. By 10:15, I was on my laptop Googling how to check the sat-nav history on a 2018 Ford Fiesta. Spoiler, it's easy. 4 taps, and there it was, a neat little list of addresses he'd driven to recently. Shoreditch? Nowhere to be seen. But Barnes? Barnes had been visited 3 Saturdays in a row. Same road, same number. I stared at it like it might rearrange itself into something sensible. A client's house, maybe. A cool new Shoreditch-adjacent cafe he didn't want me to know about because he was secretly planning a proposal. Sure. Or, more likely, someone else's house. I texted Usher, Lena, guess who's been driving to Barnes every weekend and lying about it? Usher, Mike the crumb lever? Lena, bingo. Usher, you going full Sherlock or full Carrie Underwood? Lena, leaning Sherlock, for now. That Saturday I went to Barnes. I wore my most boring coat and my least boring eyeliner, just in case I cried or got photographed. I wasn't sure which was more likely. The house was prettier than I expected. White shutters, actual ivy. Someone had swept the front step. I knocked, half hoping no one would answer, but someone did. A woman, slightly older than me, maybe early 30s. Long, blonde hair, the kind that falls effortlessly over one shoulder, the exact hair I'd found on the passenger seat. She looked me up and down, not rudely, just curiously. Hi? This is going to sound mad, but I think we need to talk. About Mike Foster? There was a pause, just a flicker of something in her eyes. Recognition. Resignation. Then she stepped back and said, Come in. The hallway smelled like vanilla and cedarwood. Not air freshener. Real stuff. The kind of scent that comes from someone who buys candles without checking the price. She led me into a living room so tidy it made me feel like a walking mess. There were fresh flowers on the coffee table and framed photos on the mantelpiece. None of Mike. That felt like a good sign, or a very bad one. Tea? She asked. I blinked. You're being incredibly calm. I like context before chaos, she said, already heading to the kitchen. Her name was Talia, and she made tea like someone who did it often for guests she wanted to impress. Big mugs, oat milk, fancy biscuits on a plate. So, she said, settling opposite me. Mike. Yeah. I sipped the tea. He's my boyfriend. Or was, possibly 5 minutes ago. Her expression didn't change much. We've been seeing each other for almost a year. Same. We stared at each other for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, we both laughed. It was short and strange, and a little hysterical, but it cracked the ice. We talked. Properly. He'd told her I was his cousin. Not joking. A cousin going through a bad breakup, staying with him for emotional support. He was so noble, a real saint. Sometimes he had to stay in Brixton to make sure I wasn't spiraling. You're not spiraling, she said, only in the sat-nav menu. We swapped stories, notes, dates, photos. She showed me a picture he'd taken in this very room, holding up a board game they'd played on a rainy Sunday. I recognized the jumper he was wearing. I'd bought it for him 2 weeks before. She was smart. Funny too. The more we talked, the less I wanted to scream. Not at her anyway. So what do we do? I asked. Talia leaned back and smiled. It was the kind of smile you wear when you've already thought 5 moves ahead. Well, she said, he has a dinner booked with me on Wednesday night, 7:30, Ottolenghi in Islington. I raised an eyebrow. Nice choice. Shall we join him? Wednesday evening, 7:25. We were already seated when he walked in. He looked good. Fresh haircut, confident walk, the kind of man who'd ordered wine in his head before the waiter even arrived. Then he saw us. For a second, his whole face glitched, like a bad Wi-Fi signal. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Hi, Mike, I said sweetly. Talia leaned on her elbow. So glad you could make it. He sat. What else could he do? Lied. Of course he did. He stammered something about confusion and boundaries and it's not what you think. He even reached for my hand. I moved it to adjust my napkin. We let him speak. mostly because it was so ridiculous we didn't want to miss a single word. Then Talia pulled out her phone. "Would you like to hear the list?" Mike blinked. "The what?" "The list," she said. "Of lies. We compiled a few, for fun." I took over. "You said you were allergic to cats. She has two. You said you don't like musicals. We saw Hamilton together. You told her you were adopted. You told me you still visit your mum in Margate every Sunday." Mike looked pale. "And," Talia added brightly, "you said you hate Monopoly, but you played it with me. Twice. You lost. Badly." I placed a crisp £20 note on the table, then pulled out a £50 from a Monopoly set and laid it next to it. "For the emotional damage," I said, "and the parking tickets." We left him there, staring at his lies and our laughter. Out on the pavement, the air was sharp and perfect. Talia linked arms with me. "Wine at mine?" "Only if you let me pick the playlist." We walked off into the London night like women in the last scene of a heist movie. Not rich in money, but richer in truth. And honestly, that felt better. 3 months later, I was in Camden Market photographing a street performer when someone tapped my shoulder. "You're standing in my shot," said a voice with a warm northern accent. I turned to find a man about my age, holding an old film camera and wearing a jacket covered in enamel pins. He smiled sheepishly. "Sorry, didn't realize you were shooting too." "No worries," I said. "You on color or black and white?" "Black and white. Feels more honest somehow." We ended up talking for 15 minutes. His name was Jamie. He worked in a camera shop in Soho and took portraits on weekends for fun. We exchanged Instagram handles and parted with a smile. No numbers, no pressure, just a tiny flicker of something. Later that night, I looked at his profile. His photos were beautiful, candid, moody, thoughtful. He'd taken one of me when I wasn't looking. I was laughing, hair windblown, in front of a stall selling vintage records. He'd tagged me. Unexpected moments. The best kind. I didn't message him back that night, but I smiled at the screen for a while. Asha came over the next day. She brought pastries and a dramatic story about her office nemesis trying to steal her yogurt from the communal fridge. "How's the photography going?" she asked between bites. "Better. I think I'm starting to see things again. Not just through a lens. Properly." She gave me a look. "This about that Jamie guy? Not really. A little. Mostly it's about me." She nodded. "That's the good kind." Spring crept into London like it always does. Shyly, then all at once. I walked more, sat outside cafes, took portraits of strangers who reminded me of versions of myself. I printed out my favourites and made a little gallery wall in my hallway. Talia came to see it. "You've got an eye," she said, "and the boots of someone who walks a lot." "I do now." We shared a bottle of wine and didn't talk about Mike. Not once. Not anymore. It's funny, the way a story can turn. How a sat-nav breadcrumb trail meant to hide something ended up revealing everything. Not just about him, about me too. What I accept, what I deserve, what I want next. It's not revenge, not even justice. It's this: peace, curiosity, hope, and maybe one day, love, the kind that doesn't leave crumbs behind. But for now, I've got my camera, a good pair of boots, and a new direction. That's enough. The end.